Hi everybody, welcome back to Bentley House. I'm Ara, and today we're continuing Addams Family October. I am super excited because this is a day I've been planning for, waiting for, dreading a little bit because I'm a little bit scared.
A toast!
But I am starting to make the Addams Family member dolls. And in this box I have been putting together things I've collected and pieces I will need to make the dolls, and I also have some of my old dolls in here. So I'm going to pull out the first dolls that I made. You may remember these from my miniature fails video, but I want to show you the difference between the dolls that I made by hand and the doll I am making using a professional doll maker's kit. So I took a doll class about a year ago, so I kept all the instructions from the person who led the class. So I have these in here, and I have my two dolls, and I love these dolls. I'm never going to be throwing them away or giving them away. They were my first try, and a lot of love went into making them, but I do want to replace them with some dolls I make out of a professional doll maker's kit. So as you can see in the bottom here, I have a few different kits. I have one for Lurch, I have one for Morticia, but today I'm going to be making Uncle Fester. And this is how he looks put together. He started out as one of these kits, but he ended up looking like this. I had some bumps and bruises along the way, but thankfully the doll artist, Sandra, she helped me out, gave me lots of tips, and of course I had taken her class, so that made it a little bit easier for me to know what to do. And here is the difference between Pugsley and Uncle Fester. You can definitely see a size difference in the head, and also the proportions are a bit more correct, seeing as he's supposed to be a little boy and he's supposed to be a grown man. I'm super excited about the way Uncle Fester turned out. It's really encouraged me to get going on the rest of the family members. I decided to make them myself because dolls can be extremely expensive, and usually they are extremely worth it to have a professional doll artist make them. I just do not have the money to be able to buy 7 different family members. So instead I opted to buy these little kits, which are a bit less expensive, quite a bit less expensive, and put the dolls together myself. The doll artist behind these kits, her name is Sandra Stacy. She has been super helpful to me, and I love all her individual pieces, how she's painted them. I've had to do a little bit of changing to give them some like dark circles around their eyes, but overall I love the expressions she paints and how she puts her kits together. If you want to check out her website, I will link all her information below. Alright, so let's get started on how I made Uncle Fester.
Is Uncle Fester?
Pugsley.
For the picture.
So here's how I received the kit from Sandra for Uncle Fester. And I also wanted to show you guys that I put some light bulbs on my fingernails in honor of putting Uncle Fester together. And well, what I'm put in the title of this video is not a tutorial. The reason for that is because if you choose to buy a kit from a doll artist, you really need to put that doll together according to the doll artist's instructions. So I am going to be putting this kit together in the way that Sandra instructs me to. And like I said before, I took her class, so I'd also seen her put this kit together, or actually a similar kit to this. And so if you do buy a kit but it's not from Sandra, you need to follow that doll artist's instructions, which is why I'm not specifically showing you how I put this doll together. The basics of it is that I use pipe cleaners and wrap it with cotton shreds of an old t-shirt to put the body together. So that's kind of the basics, but you really do need to follow each individual doll artist's instructions, which is what I'm going to be doing with this big pile of paper here. So here's how he turns out after he's all put together. I made sure to make him just a little bit stockier. He's always portrayed as having a bit of a tummy, and He's always seems to be kind of a jollier character within the Addams family, so I don't know if that's why he's portrayed as a bit stockier, but I tried to make sure and get an accurate body shape for him. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to paint the stockings on his legs, or socks. And the reason for this is you're probably not going to see this part, but if I put him into a seated position and his pant legs kind of go up his leg a bit, I want to make sure that that part is painted, and his pants are going to be black, so that's why I painted the stockings black. Next, I'm painting in the boots, and I'm just going to make them a flat brown color. Next, Sandra had a wonderful expression on his face, but I did need to add some dark circles, which is characteristic for Uncle Fester. So I went in with a micro brush and some watered down black paint and added some dark circles underneath his eyes. And in the process of that, I did kind of mess up his eyes a little bit, so I went back with a toothpick and some white and black paint and just kind of went over the places where I had messed up his eyes. So I was pretty happy with how that turned out, but I did feel like his lips were just a little bit too bright, and I'll fix that in a second. I forgot that I actually added a little bit of paint in the ears. Typically, most dolls end up being wigged, and so there's not a lot of detail put into the ears, but because Uncle Fester is staying bald, I needed to add just a little bit of paint into his ear to give the illusion of some depth. So now I'm going over his lips and just making it a little bit more of a drab brown color, and then once that's dry I can go back with a toothpick and just kind of clean up any edges. And now I'm going to just put a few little details on the boots. I did want to note that the reason I'm starting with Uncle Fester is because he's bald. And because his clothes are a little bit more fuller, and I feel like there's just a lot more room to make mistakes with Uncle Fester, because I can't really mess up his hair because he's bald, and if his outfit is a little bit too baggy and not fitted, that's kind of the style he wears. So that is the reason I'm starting with Uncle Fester, in case you were wondering. I will be moving on in the future to some more difficult dolls because I have to get through all 7, but this is how my first paint job of Uncle Fester has gone, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I sprayed it with some matte finish, and I made sure that this one on the back said it was fine for ceramic. Now I'm taking a pattern that I got from the class I took with Sandra. It's for some pantaloons for a peddler lady, but I decided to make it into Fester's pants because he usually has on some bigger, baggier pants. And so what I did is I just extended them, and I put him next to it so I could extend them the length of his leg. And then I'm putting it onto some folded fabric, and I'm going to be cutting out 2 of these. After I had these cut out, I will admit I sat there and tried to figure this out for a while. Like, I figured out I was supposed to put them on top of each other, but I just couldn't remember how we had put this together when we first did the pantaloons in the class that I took with her, and I just wanted to leave this in to show you that it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around this because I'm not a seamstress. I don't ever make clothes, and so the thought process behind putting the clothes together, flipping them inside out, etc., etc., like I just sat there stumped for a while. So if you feel like that, I think it's normal. I don't know. Just read the directions over and over again and then play with the fabric the best that you can. Once I finally figured out how the pants actually went together, it went pretty smoothly. I probably should have used more precise gluing methods, but in the end I used a miniature iron and it just kind of helped everything go together. And this is another trick I learned from Sandra's class. The little mini irons are extremely helpful. This one I'm using here, I believe, is the brand Clover, and I ordered it off of Amazon, so if you're looking for something similar, go ahead and look on Amazon, and I'm sure you'll find it. So here's the tricky part of the pants. I had to iron it and then fold it and then glue it and then iron it again, and just keep flipping it around until I figured it out, and it turned into a pair of pants. And now I'm just making the hem at the bottom of the pants, and I finally figured out to use a toothpick with a little bit of glue. One of the mistakes I made in this process, I used too much glue, and when I ironed the hem, you can actually see the glue seeping through the hem. And so I come up with, instead of doing the pants over again, I took the lazy person's way out, and yeah, I'll show that to you. Probably this is why you ask a professional doll artist to do your dolls, but I ended up just taking a Sharpie and coloring over the glue spots. If you're really close to the doll, you can still see it, but all in all, I think it kind of covered up the mistake, and after all of that, I did not have to redo the pants. But I did learn in the future not to use as much glue. Here's another pattern I got from the Peddler doll from Stacy's class, and I am going to use it to create the coat that Uncle Fester always is wearing. So I extended it down to be long enough for his body, and I think that's the only change I made. I just made it extra long. And then I cut it out on a two-way fold so that when it folds out, it's kind of folded over in a T shape. And then I cut a small hole where his head will go through to make sure that it fit. And I thought that it fit, but after putting it together and getting it on him, it doesn't. So I will show that to you. But after I checked that it fit, I started gluing the piece together, and I realized I'm gluing brown fabric on top of a brown background, so that's why it's a little difficult to see. But I was trying to protect my cutting mat from the extreme heat of the iron. That little thing gets super duper hot. So I'm just putting the edges of the coat together, and then I am cutting up the middle. Of course, you can do this at the beginning if you want. I don't know why I saved it till the end, but I guess I just wanted to make sure that the coat was put together as evenly as possible. After it's all glued together, I flipped it inside out, and I just kind of used a paintbrush to poke the arms through, and then I used the iron again to kind of set my seams. And you kind of have to like break your doll's arm to get their arms in there, but luckily, since it's made out of pipe cleaners, it was pretty easy to get him in there. And then once his entire body was in there, his tummy was just a little bit too big for the coat to go around. So keep this in mind if you're practice fitting your pieces, that once you do the seams, you can possibly lose up between 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch worth of fabric. So what I did is I made it just a tiny bit bigger, and I don't know if you can tell the difference here, but it was big enough to fit over his tummy, and that one was worth doing again. There wasn't a lazy person's way out of that one. So now I'm going to be edging the coat with this material. It is like a furniture fabric material, and I just had it laying around, but I thought it would be the perfect addition to this coat. Uncle Fester's coat always looks very warm, sometimes inappropriately warm because it's not always cold outside, but I added that to the trim and then put it on with some glue, and this also acts as a way to fray check the fabric. So I did that on the bottom of the coat and then around the cuffs of the coat. So he has matching trim on the different parts of his coat. Once again, break his arm to get it into the coat, but we're not going to be dressing and undressing him, so only really have to do that once to get him dressed. Now I'm going to be permanently attaching the coat onto the doll, and so I'm making sure not to repeat my mistake. I'm putting a very thin layer of glue so it doesn't seep through the coat. And I'm first gluing down one side, and then I'm adding a little glue onto the side I glued down first, and then overlapping the other side over it to make it look like the coat is closed. And then I will add glue to the remaining of the coat, and then carefully glue one side over the other so that the coat remains closed. After that's done, I'm going to add the same trim I put around the bottom of the coat and the cuffs, and I'm going to use this as a lining to go up the front to make it look like another edge of the coat, and this also covers up my ragged seams. I don't have to be super careful about where I cut this at the top because I am going to add a collar. The collar is a thicker piece. I just add some glue to it and then start behind the neck and wrap it around. Uncle Fester always looks like he's kind of snuggled into the coat, so I knew going in I wanted a very thick collar. Doing it this way means that I can't remove the coat and put any other clothes on him, but this is literally always what he's wearing, so I'm not super concerned. This part of it, I'm just using some micro buttons and I'm putting them on with glue. I didn't bother sewing them on or anything, and I'm just going one at a time, putting them next to the trim piece that I already glued on, just to give the coat a little extra detail. Finally, I needed to add a bit of aging and a bit of soot. Uncle Fester is always shown playing with dynamite, whether he's playing with the kids or just outside in the garden. He has always got dynamite or something going on. So I needed to add a bit of black soot to his coat, and so I'm just using some shaved chalk pastel to get that effect. And once it's on the fabric, it really doesn't come off. It does a little bit if you really try and get it off, but other than that, Uncle Fester is finished, and I am extremely happy with how he turned out. He was, I think, one of the easier members of the family, but I'm so happy with him. I'm excited to try the other members.
My name is Fester. It means to rot.
So that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Even though it wasn't really a tutorial, I wanted to share my experience of putting my very first doll together. Here's a few shots of him out and about in the mansion. I am so excited to actually have a doll in the dollhouse. This is a momentous occasion, and I'm so excited I could get this done during Addams Family October. I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!